The sound cuts through the ballroom like a gunshot. Skin against skin. A crack that freezes 200 people mid-conversation. Eleanor Waters staggers backward, her silver hair swinging across her face, her hand flying to her cheek where the red mark already blooms against her 78-year-old skin. The pearl earring her late husband gave her 40 years ago clatters to the marble floor and rolls beneath a waiter's polished shoe. Ethan Harrington stands with his palms still raised, his red tie catching the chandelier light, his name badge gleaming gold against his tailored black suit. His mouth twists with disgust as he stares down at the elderly woman in the simple navy blue dress. "You're not welcome here," he spits, loud enough for the entire grand lobby of the Pemberton Hotel to hear. The chandeliers seem to dim. The champagne glasses stop clinking. Somewhere near the ice sculpture, a woman gasps so sharply she chokes on her shrimp cocktail. Eleanor's hand trembles against her burning cheek. Not from weakness. Not from fear. From something else entirely. Something that has been building for exactly 7 months, 3 weeks, and 4 days. 30 feet away, a junior accountant named Marcus pulls out his phone. The red recording light blinks on. Within seconds, 15 more phones rise into the air like a digital jury. Now, have you ever met someone so powerful they never needed to announce themselves? Someone who could destroy your entire career with a single phone call but chose to watch and wait instead? If you have, then you know exactly what's about to unfold. And if you haven't, stay close. Because what happens in the next 9 minutes will change everything you think you know about power, patience, and the price of arrogance. Before we continue, take a moment to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Trust me, you won't want to miss what Eleanor does next. Ethan straightens his jacket, completely unaware that he has just made the worst mistake of his 34 years on this earth. He smooths his dark hair back with the same hand that struck Eleanor's face, leaving a faint impression of her foundation on his palm. The crowd parts as Eleanor steadies herself. A younger woman rushes forward to help, but Eleanor waves her away with quiet dignity. Her blue eyes, still sharp despite her age, lock onto Ethan's face for exactly 3 seconds. 3 seconds of absolute silence. 3 seconds that Ethan mistakes for submission. 3 seconds that will haunt him for the rest of his life. Eleanor bends slowly, her knees protesting, and retrieves her fallen earring from the marble floor. She holds it in her palm, studying the pearl like it contains some secret message. Then she straightens, tucks it into her small clutch purse, and turns toward the exit. No tears. No shouting. No dramatic scene. Just an elderly widow walking away from her own company's annual gala, a red handprint burning on her cheek, while the man who struck her smirks at his colleagues. "See that?" Ethan mutters to his assistant, a nervous young woman named Heather who clutches her tablet like a shield. "That's how you handle party crashers. These old ladies think they can wander into any event they want." Heather's face has gone pale. Her eyes dart toward the exit where Eleanor has just disappeared through the revolving glass doors. She opens her mouth to speak, then closes it. Then opens it again. "Mr. Harrington," she whispers, "I think I've seen her before." Ethan laughs. He actually laughs, throwing his head back so the tendons in his neck stretch tight. "Where? The senior center? The early bird special at Denny's?" He grabs a champagne flute from a passing waiter and takes a long sip. "Relax, Heather. Nobody that matters saw anything. And even if they did, what's some random grandmother going to do? Sue me?" Across the ballroom, the junior accountant Marcus is still recording. His phone captures Ethan's laugh, Ethan's dismissive wave, Ethan's complete and total ignorance of the catastrophe he has just set in motion. The timestamp on Marcus's video reads 8:47 p.m. In exactly 9 minutes, at 8:56 p.m., Ethan Harrington will lose everything. But he doesn't know that yet. Right now, he feels invincible. He feels like a king surveying his kingdom, surrounded by investors in expensive suits and executives who laugh at his jokes and servers who scurry to refill his glass. Outside the Pemberton Hotel, Eleanor Waters stands on the sidewalk. The New York City night wraps around her like a cold blanket. A yellow taxi honks. A couple stumbles past, drunk and happy. The doorman, a heavy-set man named George who has worked here for 31 years, approaches with concern etched across his weathered face. "Ma'am? Are you all right? Should I call someone?" Eleanor touches her cheek. The handprint pulses with heat. She can feel her heartbeat in the bruise, a steady rhythm that matches the determination building in her chest. "George," she says, and her voice carries a strength that makes the doorman stand up straighter. "How long have you worked at this hotel?" 31 years next March, ma'am." Eleanor nods. "Then you remember the renovation in 1998, the one that added the rooftop garden." George's eyes widen. His mouth falls open slightly, because nobody remembers that renovation except the people who funded it, except the family whose name is carved into the cornerstone on the east side of the building. "You're..." George stammers. "You're Eleanor Waters. The Eleanor Waters." She reaches into her clutch and pulls out her phone. The screen illuminates her face, highlighting the angry red mark on her cheek, casting shadows beneath her determined eyes. "I need you to do something for me, George." "Anything, Mrs. Waters. Anything at all." Eleanor's thumb hovers over a contact saved simply as bored. She hasn't pressed this button in 3 years. Hasn't needed to. She built Avalon Enterprises from nothing, grew it into a company worth $800 million, and handed the daily operations to hungry young executives so she could finally rest. So she could finally grieve her husband in peace. So she could finally live the quiet life she had earned. But rest is over now. Peace was shattered the moment Ethan Harrington's palm connected with her face. And the quiet life? That died somewhere between the gasp of the crowd and the clatter of her pearl earring hitting marble. "Keep everyone inside," Eleanor says to George. "No one leaves for the next 15 minutes. Can you do that?" George nods so hard his cap nearly falls off. "Yes, ma'am. Consider it done." Eleanor presses the button. The phone rings once. Twice. On the third ring, a voice answers. Professional. "Waiting. Mrs. Waters. It's been a long time." "Too long, Richard." Eleanor watches through the hotel's glass doors as Ethan Harrington raises another champagne toast inside. "I need the emergency protocols activated. All of them." The pause. Then, "All of them?" "Eleanor, that would mean..." "I know exactly what it means." Her voice doesn't waver. Her hand doesn't shake. "Do it." She ends the call. The timestamp on her phone reads 8:51 p.m. 5 minutes remain. Inside the ballroom, Ethan Harrington has no idea that his entire world is about to collapse. He laughs at a joke someone tells. He shakes hands with an investor. He checks his reflection in a mirrored column and adjusts his red tie. He doesn't notice that his assistant Heather has gone pale as chalk. He doesn't notice that she's frantically typing on her tablet, searching for something. He doesn't notice when she finds it. A company portrait from 1987, a much younger Eleanor Waters standing in front of the original Avalon Enterprises headquarters, holding the same pearl earring she just picked up off the floor. Heather's hands begin to shake. "Oh God," she whispers to no one. "Oh my God." But Ethan doesn't hear her. He's too busy feeling powerful. Too busy feeling untouchable. Too busy believing that he sits at the top of the corporate food chain. He doesn't realize that the chain is about to strangle him. And the woman he just slapped? The elderly widow in the navy blue dress with the red mark on her cheek and 40 years of business experience burning in her veins? She's walking back through those revolving doors right now. But what was Eleanor doing at her own company's gala without anyone recognizing her? And why has she been watching Ethan for nearly 8 months? The answers will shock you more than the slap itself. Ethan Harrington wakes every morning at 5:15 a.m. in his Tribeca penthouse, and the first thing he does is smile at his own reflection. The mirror shows him exactly what he wants to see: sharp jaw, perfect hair, eyes that close deals worth millions before lunch. He practices his expressions like an actor preparing for opening night. The concerned nod. The thoughtful squint. The laugh that makes investors feel like they're sharing a secret with a friend. This morning, 8 hours before the gala, Ethan stands in his marble bathroom and rehearses the speech he'll give tonight. His voice bounces off Italian tile as he gestures at his own image. "Avalon Enterprises has exceeded all projections," he says to the mirror. And under my leadership, we will continue to dominate. He pauses. Adjusts the word. Under my vision, we will continue to dominate. Better. More personal. More powerful. The truth is simpler and uglier. Ethan Harrington has been manager of Avalon's Northeast Division for just 18 months. He inherited a well-oiled machine built by people who retired or quit or were pushed out when he arrived. The company's success has nothing to do with his vision and everything to do with the foundation laid decades ago by a woman he's never met. A woman he will slap across the face in exactly 8 hours. But Ethan doesn't know that yet. Right now, he believes his own legend. His penthouse costs $14,000 a month. The company pays for it. His suits come from a tailor on Madison Avenue who charges more for a single jacket than most Americans earn in 2 weeks. The company pays for those too. His car, his meals, his club memberships, his quarterly trips to Aspen, all billed to Avalon Enterprises under the flexible category of executive expenses. Nobody questions him. Nobody dares. Because Ethan has cultivated something more valuable than competence. He's cultivated fear. 3 months ago, a senior accountant named Dorothy Chin noticed irregularities in Ethan's expense reports. She scheduled a meeting with HR to discuss her concerns. By the end of that week, Dorothy was packing her desk into a cardboard box while security watched. Performance issues, Ethan explained to anyone who asked. You know how it is. Some people just can't handle the pace. Dorothy had worked at Avalon for 22 years. Her performance reviews were spotless. But Ethan knows something that Dorothy never understood. In the corporate world, truth is whatever the most powerful person in the room says it is. And in every room Ethan enters, he makes sure he's the most powerful person. At 7:30 a.m., his driver picks him up in a black Mercedes. Ethan scrolls through his phone during the ride to the office, not looking at reports or data or anything that might actually help the company. He scrolls through social media, checking mentions of his name, reading articles about young executives changing the business landscape, imagining himself on magazine covers. His assistant Heather waits at the elevator with coffee. She's learned his preferences down to the exact temperature and foam ratio. She's also learned to never make eye contact for longer than 2 seconds and to never, under any circumstances, deliver bad news before noon. Good morning, Mr. Harrington. Ethan takes the coffee without acknowledgement. No thank you. No nod. Heather might as well be furniture. Useful furniture that fetches things and absorbs blame, but furniture nonetheless. The gala checklist, he says, walking toward his corner office. Go. Heather falls into step beside him, reading from her tablet while trying not to trip. Venue confirmed. Catering is set up starting at 4. Guest list finalized at 212 attendees. Your speech is loaded to the teleprompter. The band knows to play your entrance music when you arrive. Entrance music? The Frank Sinatra piece you requested. My Way. Ethan smiles. Of course that's the song he chose. Perfect. What about security? Standard protocol. Guest list verification at the door, photo ID required. Good. I don't want any crashers ruining the night. He stops at his office door and turns to face Heather directly. She flinches slightly, a reaction she can't help, a reaction Ethan pretends not to notice but secretly enjoys. This is my moment, Heather. The board is sending representatives. There are rumors about a promotion to regional director. I need everything flawless. It will be, Mr. Harrington. It better be. He pushes through the door and closes it in her face. Inside his corner office, Ethan settles into a leather chair that cost more than a used car. Floor-to-ceiling windows display Manhattan's skyline like a personal trophy case. He props his feet on the desk, Italian leather shoes, polished to mirrors, and thinks about the future. Regional director is just the beginning. In 5 years, he plans to be running the entire company. In 10 years, he'll sit on boards across the industry, a titan of business, a name spoken with reverence in conference rooms from New York to Tokyo. He doesn't think about the people he's stepped on to get here, the careers he's ended, the ideas he's stolen, the credit he's claimed for work done by others. Why would he? In Ethan's mind, those people were obstacles. And obstacles exist to be overcome. At 2:47 p.m., something unusual happens. Heather knocks on his door with a confused expression. "Mr. Harrington? There's a woman here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's about the gala." Ethan sighs. "What woman? Vendor? Caterer?" "She didn't say. She's older. Says she just wants to walk through the space before tonight." "Tell her no. We have protocols for a reason." Heather hesitates. She was very insistent, and she seemed to know a lot about the company. She mentioned the original office on West 43rd Street, the one from before we moved to this building. Something flickers in Ethan's attention, a tiny spark of curiosity. The West 43rd Street office closed in 1995, before he was even in high school. How would some random old woman know about it? But the spark dies as quickly as it appeared. He has more important things to focus on. The gala. The speech. The impression he needs to make on the board representatives. "I don't care if she knows the architect's blood type," Ethan says. "No appointment, no meeting. Have security escort her out if she won't leave voluntarily." "Yes, Mr. Harrington." Heather disappears. The moment passes. Ethan goes back to practicing his smile in the reflection of his darkened computer screen. He never sees the woman. He never learns that she stood in the lobby for 17 minutes, watching the employees rush past, studying the company she built with her own hands, noting the changes made without her consultation. He never learns that Eleanor Waters walked every floor of the building that afternoon, invisible in her ordinary clothes and silver hair, just another elderly visitor that busy people ignore. He never learns that she overheard his assistant telling security to escort her out. That she heard the words, "Mr. Harrington's orders," and filed them away in a memory sharper than any executive in the building. The afternoon passes. The sun sinks toward Jersey. The city lights begin to flicker on, one by one, like stars being born. At 6:30 p.m., Ethan's driver arrives to take him to the Pemberton Hotel. He checks his reflection one final time. Red tie straight. Hair perfect. Smile ready. "Tonight," he tells his reflection, "everyone will know my name." He has no idea how right he is. And somewhere across the city, Eleanor Waters buttons her navy blue dress and clasps the pearl earring her late husband Henry gave her on their 40th wedding anniversary. "One last job," she whispers to the photograph on her dresser. Henry's smiling face looks back at her, frozen forever at age 68, still handsome, still kind, still the only man who ever saw her as more than a business machine. "One last job and then I'll rest." She picks up her clutch purse. Inside is a single item besides her phone, a folded piece of paper with 7 months of notes. 7 months of observations. 7 months of documentation showing exactly how Ethan Harrington has been running her company into the ground while stealing credit and destroying lives. Eleanor had planned to present this evidence to the board next week. She had planned a quiet transition, a gentle removal, a dignified end to Ethan's career that would let him slink away without public humiliation. But plans change. Sometimes, they change the moment a hand connects with a face. And the slap that Ethan Harrington will deliver in less than 2 hours? It won't just end his career. It will end something much, much bigger. Henry Waters died on a Tuesday. Eleanor remembers this because Tuesdays were their day. Every Tuesday for 53 years of marriage, they ate dinner at the same Italian restaurant on East 67th Street. Linguine for him. Eggplant parmesan for her. A bottle of cheap Chianti that cost $12 in 1971 and $68 by 2023. The restaurant closed 6 months after Henry's funeral. The owner said he couldn't bear to see Eleanor's empty table anymore. This is what people don't understand about Eleanor Waters. They see the company, the buildings, the stock price and quarterly earnings and magazine profiles from decades past. They see Avalon Enterprises and assume that Eleanor was always the woman behind the desk, signing papers, making calls, building an empire. They don't see the girl from Scranton who worked 3 jobs to put herself through night school. They don't see the young bride who started a small consulting firm out of her kitchen while her husband drove trucks to pay the rent. They don't see the mother who built meetings around her children's school schedules, who reviewed contracts while sitting in the bleachers at Little League games, who turned down a cover story in Fortune magazine because it conflicted with her daughter's wedding. They certainly don't see the widow who scattered her husband's ashes in Central Park and then couldn't leave her apartment for 4 months because the world outside felt too loud without his voice in it. Eleanor is 78 years old. She has survived a heart attack, 2 economic recessions, a hostile takeover attempt in 1994, breast cancer in 2011, and the death of her only son in a car accident that the newspapers called tragic, but she calls something else entirely. She has buried her husband. She has buried her child. She has buried friends and colleagues and competitors and enemies. And she is tired. Not weak. Never weak. Just tired in a way that young people can't understand, a weariness that settles into your bones and makes you want to sit on a park bench and watch pigeons instead of sitting in boardrooms watching men in suits argue about market share. 3 years ago, Eleanor made a decision. She would step back. She would let the younger generation run things. She would trust the executives she'd trained and the systems she'd built and the culture she'd created over 4 decades of work. She would finally rest. The board agreed to her terms. Eleanor retained her ownership stake, still the majority shareholder by a comfortable margin, but removed herself from daily operations. She attended quarterly meetings by video call. She signed documents that required her signature. Otherwise, she tended her roses in the small garden behind her brownstone and took long walks through the city she loved. It worked for a while. Then the letters started coming. The first arrived 8 months ago. No return address. Typed, not handwritten. It contained a single sentence. Ask about the Chen termination. Eleanor didn't know who Dorothy Chen was. So she asked. What she learned disturbed her. The second letter came 2 weeks later. Check the expense reports. March through June. Eleanor checked. What she found made her stomach turn. More letters followed. Anonymous tips about falsified data. About stolen ideas presented as original work. About a pattern of behavior that would have gotten any other employee fired within a month. Eleanor started investigating. Quietly. Carefully. The way she'd learned to do business in the 1980s, when being a woman in the boardroom meant being underestimated and overlooked. She pulled records. She interviewed former employees. She sat in coffee shops and listened to young workers complain about their boss, never revealing who she was, just a sympathetic elderly stranger with good listening skills. The picture that emerged was worse than she'd imagined. Ethan Harrington wasn't just arrogant. He was dangerous. He'd taken the company Eleanor had spent 40 years building and turned it into his personal kingdom. Employees worked in fear. Good ideas were buried. Bad decisions went unchallenged because challenging Ethan meant career suicide. 3 people had resigned in the past year alone, citing workplace environment. 2 others had been fired for what HR records called performance issues but what former colleagues called retaliation. And the board? The board saw only what Ethan wanted them to see. Polished presentations. Carefully curated data. The charm offensive of a man who understood that in business, perception often matters more than reality. Eleanor could have stopped it months ago. She had enough evidence. She had the authority. 1 phone call to the board chairman and Ethan would be gone before lunch. But Eleanor wanted more than his removal. She wanted to understand how this happened. How her company, her legacy, had ended up in the hands of someone so fundamentally wrong for the job. So she watched. And waited. And documented everything. Tonight was supposed to be another observation. Another chance to see Ethan in his natural habitat, performing for the investors and executives who would decide his future. Eleanor had planned to blend into the crowd, collect a few more data points, and present her findings to the board next week in a private session. She had not planned on confrontation. She had not planned on asking a young man in a red tie for directions to the restroom. She had certainly not planned on being slapped across the face in front of 200 witnesses. But here she is, standing on the sidewalk outside the Pemberton Hotel. The cool November air stings her cheek where the handprint still burns. The doorman George waits nervously by the entrance, preventing anyone from leaving, following her instructions with the loyalty of a man who remembers what real leadership looks like. Eleanor's phone shows 8:52 p.m. Richard, her longtime attorney and the only board member she trusts completely, has confirmed that the emergency protocols are activated. In 4 minutes, everything changes. She thinks about Henry. What would he say if he could see her now? He always worried that she worked too hard, pushed too far, cared too much about a company that would exist long after they were both gone. Let it go, he used to tell her, usually late at night when she sat up reviewing reports while he tried to sleep. The world won't end if you take a break. But Henry never understood. The company wasn't just a business. It was proof. Proof that a girl from Scranton could build something that mattered. Proof that all those years of sacrifice and struggle and missed dinners and difficult choices had added up to something real. And tonight, a man who'd been in the company for 18 months tried to erase all of that with a single slap. Eleanor touches her cheek one more time. The heat has faded slightly, but she knows the mark will be visible for days. Let the world see it. Let the photographs and videos spreading across social media right now tell the story better than any press release ever could. The automatic doors of the Pemberton Hotel slide open. Eleanor steps forward. Behind her, the city continues its endless noise. Taxis honking. People laughing on their way to dinner. The distant wail of an ambulance rushing toward some unknown emergency. Ahead of her, through the elegant lobby and past the crystal chandeliers, 200 people wait in a ballroom. They don't know what's coming. They don't know that the elderly woman walking toward them isn't just a victim. She's the judge, jury, and executioner. And her verdict has already been decided. But there's something Eleanor doesn't know yet either. Something about the anonymous letters. Something about who sent them and why. That secret will surface soon. And when it does, the betrayal will cut deeper than any slap. The ballroom of the Pemberton Hotel glitters like a jewelry box. Crystal chandeliers hang from 20-foot ceilings, scattering light across walls covered in gold leaf and burgundy silk. A 12-piece orchestra plays jazz standards from a raised platform. Ice sculptures shaped like the Avalon Enterprises logo slowly melt into silver trays. Champagne flows from a fountain that cost more than some people's annual salaries. Ethan Harrington stands at the center of it all, exactly where he believes he belongs. To another record quarter, he says, raising his glass toward a cluster of investors. His voice carries the practiced warmth of a man who has rehearsed sincerity until it sounds almost real. And to many more. The investors toast. They smile. They do not notice that Ethan's eyes are already scanning the room for more important people to impress. The gala began 2 hours ago, and so far, everything has gone according to plan. The board representatives arrived at 7 and seemed pleased with the venue, the turnout, the general atmosphere of success and wealth. Ethan made sure to shake each of their hands, to look them in the eyes with exactly the right mixture of confidence and humility, to plant the seeds for the promotion he knows he deserves. Regional Director. The words taste sweet in his mind. Regional Director of Avalon Enterprises, Northeast Region. A corner office twice the size of his current one. A budget that would make his current expense account look like pocket change. Power that extended across 6 states instead of just 1 city. All he has to do is make it through tonight without incident. At 8:15 p.m., Ethan notices her for the first time. An elderly woman in a navy blue dress, sitting alone at a table near the back of the ballroom. She doesn't fit. Everyone else at the gala wears designer labels and statement jewelry, clothes chosen to signal wealth and status. This woman wears a simple dress that could have come from any department store in America. Her only accessory is a pair of pearl earrings that catch the chandelier light. She's watching him. Ethan looks away. Probably someone's grandmother, dragged along as a +1 and abandoned at a table while her escort networks. The gala has a strict guest list, but security can't catch everything. Sometimes people slip through. Usually they have the decency to be quiet and invisible. At 8:31 p.m., he notices her again. She's moved. Now she stands near the champagne fountain, holding a glass she doesn't drink from, still watching him with those sharp blue eyes. There's something unsettling about her gaze. Something that makes Ethan think of his own grandmother, who used to stare at him the same way when he lied about eating cookies before dinner. He shakes off the feeling. Tonight is too important for distractions. At 8:40 p.m., the woman approaches him. Ethan is in the middle of a conversation with two board representatives when he feels a tap on his shoulder. He turns, ready to dismiss whoever has interrupted, and finds himself face to face with the elderly woman in the navy blue dress. "Excuse me," she says. Her voice is quiet but clear. "Could you point me toward the restrooms?" The board representatives watch the exchange with polite curiosity. Ethan feels a flash of irritation. This is exactly the kind of interruption he was afraid of. Some confused old woman who doesn't know her place, inserting herself into a conversation that could determine his entire future. He forces a smile. "They're in the lobby, past the main entrance." The woman doesn't move. "I'm afraid I got turned around. This hotel is so large. Could you show me?" Something in Ethan's chest tightens. The audacity of this woman, asking him to escort her to the bathroom like some kind of servant. In front of board members. In front of people whose opinions actually matter. "I'm in the middle of something," he says, his smile hardening. "I'm sure one of the servers can help you." The woman tilts her head slightly. The gesture reminds Ethan of a bird studying a worm. "I'd prefer your help," she says. "If it's not too much trouble." The board representatives exchange glances. One of them, a gray-haired man named Patterson who controls 3 votes on the board, raises an eyebrow in Ethan's direction. The message is clear: handle this gracefully. Ethan's jaw tightens. His fingers grip his champagne glass hard enough to leave fingerprints on the crystal. "Ma'am," he says, lowering his voice, "I don't know how you got in here, but this is a private event. Perhaps you should." "I'm a guest," the woman interrupts. "Same as you." Something snaps. Later, Ethan will try to explain what happened. He'll claim he was provoked. He'll say the woman was aggressive, threatening, that he felt unsafe. He'll hire lawyers and publicists and spin doctors to reshape the narrative. But in the moment, there is only rage. Rage at being challenged. Rage at being embarrassed. Rage at this insignificant old woman who dared to interrupt his moment of triumph. He leans close, so close he can smell her perfume, something floral and old-fashioned, like roses from a funeral. "You're not welcome here," he hisses. "Stay out of the way." And then his hand moves. The slap echoes through the ballroom like a thunderclap. Eleanor's head snaps to the side. Her pearl earring flies from her ear and clatters across the marble floor. Her hand rises to her cheek, where the red outline of Ethan's fingers already burns against her skin. The orchestra stops playing. The champagne fountain continues its quiet bubbling, obscenely cheerful in the sudden silence. 200 people stand frozen, champagne glasses raised halfway to lips, mouths open in shock. And Ethan Harrington, in that crystallized moment of perfect clarity, finally sees the woman's eyes. Not afraid. Not hurt. Something else entirely. Something that looks almost like satisfaction. But the moment passes. Ethan's brain scrambles to justify what just happened, to recategorize it as necessary, as appropriate, as anything other than what it actually was. "Security," he calls out, his voice steadier than it should be. "Remove this woman immediately." No one moves. Patterson, the gray-haired board member, has turned a shade of gray himself. His phone is already in his hand, not recording, but typing. Furiously typing. Heather, Ethan's assistant, stands by the ice sculpture with her tablet pressed against her chest. Her face has gone completely white. Her lips move silently, forming words that Ethan can't hear across the room. And Eleanor Waters, 78 years old, widow, cancer survivor, founder of the company that Ethan Harrington claims as his own, simply touches her burning cheek and turns toward the exit. She doesn't run. She doesn't cry. She walks with the slow, measured pace of a woman who has all the time in the world. Because she does. The revolving door spins, and she disappears into the New York night. Ethan watches her go. His hand still tingles from the impact. His heart hammers against his ribs. Around him, the ballroom slowly comes back to life, whispers spreading like fire through dry grass, phones emerging from pockets and purses, the first viral videos beginning their journey across the internet. He tells himself it doesn't matter. He tells himself she was nobody. He tells himself that by morning, this will all be forgotten. The timestamp on the ballroom's security camera reads 8:47 p.m. In exactly 9 minutes, Ethan Harrington will learn just how wrong he is. And the woman he slapped? She's standing outside right now, phone pressed to her ear, speaking 3 words that will end his career forever. But first, she needs to make sure he understands exactly why. The sound keeps repeating in Eleanor's mind as she stands on the sidewalk. The impact of palm against cheek. The gasp of 200 witnesses. The clatter of her pearl earring hitting marble. Henry's earring. The last gift he ever gave her. Eleanor closes her eyes for 3 seconds. Just 3 seconds to feel the rage building in her chest, to acknowledge it, to let it fuel what comes next instead of consuming her. She learned this technique 40 years ago, during a hostile takeover attempt when a rival CEO called her a word that still makes her jaw clench when she thinks about it. 3 seconds of fury. Then action. She opens her eyes. George the doorman waits nervously by the entrance. He's done his job well. The revolving doors have stopped spinning, and 2 bellhops stand guard with apologetic smiles for anyone trying to leave. Eleanor can see confused faces pressed against the lobby windows, guests wondering why they can't go home. Let them wonder. Eleanor dials Richard's number. He answers before the first ring finishes. "It's done," he says. His voice carries the grim satisfaction of a man who has waited years for this moment. The board has been notified. Emergency protocols are active. You have full authority. Who else knows? Patterson called me directly. He saw everything. He's prepared to testify if necessary. Eleanor almost laughs. Patterson, that cautious old dinosaur, ready to throw Ethan to the wolves. Amazing how quickly loyalty evaporates when someone shows their true colors in front of witnesses. And the others? Falling in line. Nobody wants to be associated with what he just did. The video is already on Twitter, Facebook, that other one, TikTok. By morning, it'll be everywhere. Eleanor touches her cheek. The handprint still burns, but fainter now. Soon it will be just a bruise. Then a memory. Then a story she tells her grandchildren about the night she cleaned house. "I'm going back in," she says. Richard pauses. "Eleanor, you don't have to. We can handle this remotely. The lawyers are ready. The paperwork is drafted. You can go home and let the system work." "No. Eleanor." "He hit me, Richard." Her voice doesn't rise, but something in it hardens like cooling steel. "In front of everyone. In the company I built with my own hands. In the building named after my husband." She hasn't mentioned that detail yet. The Pemberton Hotel was named after Henry's mother's family. Eleanor donated the funds for its renovation in 1998 as a gift to her husband. Every brick, every chandelier, every square foot of that grand ballroom exists because of the Waters family. And Ethan Harrington struck her there. In her house. With her people watching. "I'm going back in," Eleanor repeats. "And I'm going to look him in the eye when I end his career." Richard sighs. It's the sigh of a man who has known Eleanor for 35 years, who has watched her survive things that would destroy most people, who learned long ago that arguing with her is like arguing with gravity. "I'll have security meet you at the door," he says. Real security. Not hotel staff. 5 minutes. 3. They're already on their way. Eleanor ends the call. The timestamp on her phone reads 8:53 p.m. 3 minutes until 8:56. 3 minutes until she walks back into that ballroom and tears Ethan Harrington's world apart. She uses the time to think. Not about revenge. Revenge is easy, satisfying, hollow. Eleanor learned long ago that true justice requires more than punishment. It requires understanding. It requires making sure the lesson sticks. No, she thinks about the employees. The 200 people in that ballroom who work for her company. Some of them are good people, hard workers who show up every day and do their best despite working for a man who doesn't deserve their loyalty. Some of them are enablers, executives who saw what Ethan was and looked the other way because it was easier than fighting. And some of them helped him. Eleanor has their names. The anonymous letters contained more than accusations against Ethan. They contained lists. Names of managers who participated in the Dorothy Chin firing. Names of executives who falsified reports. Names of employees who bullied and harassed and created the toxic environment that allowed someone like Ethan to thrive. The letters came from someone inside the company. Someone who knew where the bodies were buried. Someone who wanted Eleanor to know the truth. Eleanor still doesn't know who sent them. But tonight she'll find out. A black SUV pulls up to the curb. Four people emerge. 2 men and 2 women in dark suits with earpieces and the unmistakable bearing of professionals who know how to handle difficult situations. Private security from a firm Eleanor has used for decades. "Mrs. Waters," the lead woman says, "we're ready when you are." Eleanor straightens her navy blue dress. She touches the empty spot on her ear where the pearl earring should be. Someone inside still has it, dropped it, kicked it aside without realizing what it meant. She'll get it back. She'll get everything back. The automatic doors slide open, and Eleanor Waters walks into the Pemberton Hotel for the second time tonight. The lobby is chaos. Guests crowd near the entrance, demanding to know why they can't leave. Hotel staff apologize profusely while following George's instructions. Someone is threatening to call the police. Someone else is crying about a babysitter waiting at home. Eleanor ignores all of it. She walks through the lobby with her security team flanking her, past the golden mirrors and velvet couches, toward the ballroom where 200 people wait without knowing what's coming. The ballroom doors are closed. 2 hotel workers stand guard, clearly out of their depth, clearly wishing they had chosen different careers. "Open them," Eleanor says. The workers look at each other. Then at the security team. Then back at Eleanor. One of them reaches for the handle. The doors swing wide. Eleanor steps into the ballroom. The conversation dies instantly. Every head turns. Every eye locks onto the elderly woman in the navy blue dress, the red mark still visible on her cheek, walking toward the center of the room with the measured confidence of someone who owns the building and everyone in it. Because she does. Ethan stands by the champagne fountain, surrounded by a small group of executives who haven't managed to escape yet. His face cycles through emotions as Eleanor approaches. Confusion, then recognition, then fear, then something that looks almost like denial. He laughs. Actually laughs. "Security," he calls out, his voice cracking slightly on the second syllable. "I thought I told you to remove this woman." No one moves. "Did you hear me?" Ethan's voice rises. "Get her out of here." The head of Eleanor's security team steps forward. "Mr. Harrington, I suggest you remain calm." Ethan's face twists. "Who the hell are you?" "I'm the manager of this company. I give the orders here." Eleanor stops walking. She's 10 feet away from him now. Close enough to see the sweat beading on his forehead. Close enough to smell his expensive cologne mixed with the sour tang of panic. "No," she says. "You don't." The ballroom has gone completely silent. 200 people hold their breath. The champagne fountain bubbles on, its cheerful sound suddenly absurd in the tension of the moment. "My name," Eleanor continues, "is Eleanor Waters. I built this company in 1978 with $12,000 and a vision. I grew it from nothing into what it is today. I named the Northeast Division after my late husband, Henry, who believed in me when no one else did." She pauses. Lets the words sink in. "I am the majority shareholder of Avalon Enterprises. I am the founder and chairman emeritus of the board. And as of 9 minutes ago, I have reassumed full operational control of every division, every department, every single aspect of this company." Ethan's face has gone the color of old milk. "That's impossible," he whispers. "You can't just—" "I can." Eleanor reaches into her clutch and pulls out a single sheet of paper. Emergency Protocols, Article 7, Section 3. In the event of gross misconduct by executive leadership witnessed by board members, the founding shareholder may assume immediate operational control pending formal review. She holds up the paper. It trembles slightly in her fingers, not from fear, but from the effort of containing everything she wants to say. "You struck me, Mr. Harrington." In front of Patterson and 2 other board members. In front of 200 witnesses. In front of cameras that are currently uploading video to every social media platform in existence. The paper lowers. Eleanor's eyes meet Ethan's. "You're fired." The words hit the room like a physical force. Someone gasps. Someone drops a champagne glass, and it shatters against the marble floor. Ethan's mouth opens and closes. His hands tremble at his sides. "You can't," he manages. "I have a contract. Lawyers. You can't just." "I can. And I am." Eleanor turns slightly, addressing the entire room. "But Mr. Harrington isn't the only problem in this company." The temperature seems to drop 10 degrees. "For the past 8 months, I have been investigating misconduct across every level of Avalon Enterprises. Falsified reports, stolen ideas, wrongful terminations, harassment, fraud." She pauses. "I have names." The ballroom shifts. Executives glance at each other nervously. Someone near the back makes a break for the exit, only to be stopped by Eleanor's security team. "Those of you whose names are on my list know who you are. You have until Monday morning to submit your resignations. Anyone who fails to do so will be terminated for cause, with full documentation provided to future employers." A wave of murmurs sweeps through the crowd. And for everyone else, the employees who did nothing wrong, who tried to do good work despite impossible conditions, "I apologize." Eleanor's voice softens slightly. "You deserved better leadership. Starting tomorrow, you'll have it." She turns back to Ethan. He stands frozen, his red tie suddenly looking less like a power statement and more like a target. His mouth works silently. His eyes dart around the room, searching for allies, finding none. "Your access has been revoked," Eleanor says. "Your office will be cleared by morning. Security will escort you from the building. Any attempt to contact employees or clients will be considered harassment and handled accordingly." Ethan finds his voice. "You'll regret this. I'll sue. I'll destroy you. You'll do nothing." Eleanor steps closer, close enough that only he can hear her next words. "Because I have 7 months of documentation proving exactly what kind of man you are. And if you push me, I won't just end your career. I'll end your future. Every company will know your name. Every recruiter will have your file. You'll be unhireable in any industry that matters." She steps back. "Take him out." 2 security guards move forward. Ethan doesn't resist. His legs seem to have lost the ability to hold him up, and he half walks, half staggers toward the exit. As he passes Eleanor, he stops. Something ugly crosses his face. "You're just an old woman," he spits. "This company doesn't need you. It never did." Eleanor smiles. It's a cold smile, empty of warmth, full of something that might be pity. "That's where you're wrong, Mr. Harrington. I built this company with my own hands. I know every stone in its foundation, every name on its walls, every secret buried in its files." She leans in. "Including who sent me those anonymous letters about you." Ethan's eyes widen. But before he can respond, the security guards are moving again, pulling him toward the door. The ballroom doors close behind him, and Eleanor Waters stands alone in the center of her company's annual gala, surrounded by 200 stunned employees, the red mark on her cheek already fading, her victory already complete. But one question remains. Who sent the letters? Who inside this company wanted Ethan destroyed badly enough to risk everything by reaching out to Eleanor directly? The answer will change everything Eleanor thinks she knows. And it's standing in this room right now, watching her with an expression that holds equal parts relief and terror. Heather drops her tablet. The crack of glass against marble cuts through the ballroom like a second slap. Every head turns toward the young assistant, who stands frozen by the ice sculpture, her face drained of all color, her eyes locked on Eleanor Waters with an expression of pure terror. Eleanor notices. The ballroom hangs suspended in the aftermath of Ethan's removal. 200 people stand scattered among the champagne fountains and crystal chandeliers, unsure whether to stay or run, whether to celebrate or mourn, whether to pretend they saw nothing or confess everything. Marcus, the junior accountant who recorded the slap, still holds his phone in trembling hands. The video has already been shared 400 times. By midnight, it will be 400,000. By morning, every news outlet in America will lead with the same footage. A young executive in a red tie striking an elderly woman across the face. The story will write itself. Arrogant manager. Secret owner. Instant karma. But Eleanor knows the real story is far more complicated. She turns to address the crowd, her voice carrying across the silent ballroom with the authority of someone who has commanded rooms like this for 40 years. I understand you have questions. Nervous laughter ripples through the crowd. Questions. That's one word for the chaos churning in every mind present. The gala is over, Eleanor continues. Those of you who are not on my list may leave. Report to your regular offices on Monday. There will be a company-wide meeting at 9 a.m. to discuss transitions and next steps. Bodies begin to move toward the exits. Slowly at first, then faster, as people realize they have permission to escape this nightmare. But not everyone leaves. A cluster of executives remains near the bar, whispering among themselves with the desperate energy of people calculating their odds of survival. Eleanor recognizes several faces from her investigation. Marcus Thompson, VP of Marketing, who signed off on falsified customer engagement numbers. Denise Watkins, Director of HR, who approved Dorothy Chen's termination without asking a single question. Jerome Bailey, CFO, whose signature appears on expense reports that would make a federal auditor weep. They know their names are on the list. They're trying to figure out what to do about it. Eleanor watches them with the patience of a woman who has seen this dance before. In 1994, during the hostile takeover attempt, she watched a similar group of executives huddle in a similar corner, whispering similar plans. They thought they could outmaneuver her. They thought she was just a woman with a company, not a fighter with nothing to lose. They were wrong then. These people are wrong now. But Eleanor's attention keeps drifting back to Heather. The young assistant hasn't moved from her spot by the ice sculpture. Her broken tablet lies at her feet, its screen spiderwebbed with cracks, its data leaking onto the marble floor like digital blood. There's something in Heather's eyes. Not just fear. Not just shock. Guilt. Eleanor crosses the ballroom. Her heels click against the marble with each step, a steady rhythm that draws every remaining eye in the room. The cluster of executives falls silent. The waitstaff freezes with trays of untouched appetizers. Even the champagne fountain seems to bubble more quietly. She stops in front of Heather. Up close, the young woman looks even younger than Eleanor expected. 25, maybe 26. Fresh out of business school, probably full of ambition and idealism and all the other qualities that companies like Avalon claim to value but actually crush. "You're Heather," Eleanor says. It's not a question. Heather's throat works. She tries to speak. Nothing comes out. Ethan's assistant. "You've been with the company for 2 years. Eleanor tilts her head slightly, studying the young woman's face. "You were Dorothy Chen's mentee before she was terminated." Something flickers in Heather's eyes. A flash of pain quickly suppressed. "I did some research on Miss Chen after I received the first letter about her case," Eleanor continues. "She was an excellent accountant. 22 years of perfect reviews. She noticed irregularities in the expense reports and scheduled a meeting with HR to discuss them." Heather's hands begin to shake. 3 days later, she was fired. The official reason was performance issues. The real reason was that she threatened Ethan Harrington's comfortable little empire. Eleanor pauses. "You were in the room when it happened, weren't you?" A tear slides down Heather's cheek. "I couldn't stop it." Her voice comes out as a whisper, cracked and broken. I told HR that Dorothy was the best accountant in the department. I showed them her reviews, her numbers, everything. But Denise said the decision came from above. She said there was nothing anyone could do." Eleanor nods slowly. "And then you started sending letters." The remaining executives freeze. Every ear in the room strains to hear. Heather's face crumbles. The mask she's been wearing for 8 months finally falls away, revealing the exhausted, terrified, desperate young woman underneath. "I didn't know what else to do." The words tumble out in a rush. Nobody would listen. HR was covering for him. The board only saw what Ethan wanted them to see. "I looked up the company history, found your name, found out you still own the majority stake." She takes a shuddering breath. I thought maybe if you knew the truth, you'd do something. I never expected. I never thought he would. She gestures helplessly toward Eleanor's cheek, where the red mark has faded to a dull pink. Eleanor stands very still. This changes things. For 8 months, she's wondered about the mysterious letter writer. She imagined a disgruntled former employee with an axe to grind. A competitor trying to create chaos. Perhaps even a board member maneuvering for position. She never imagined a 25-year-old assistant who watched her mentor get destroyed and decided to fight back the only way she knew how. You took a significant risk, Eleanor says finally. If Ethan had found out. I know. Heather wipes her eyes with the back of her hand, smearing mascara across her cheek. I knew what would happen if anyone traced those letters back to me. But Dorothy was my friend. She taught me everything. She believed in me when nobody else did. Her voice hardens. And he destroyed her like she was nothing. Like 22 years of loyalty meant nothing. Like she was just garbage to be thrown away. Eleanor looks at this young woman, really looks at her, and sees something familiar. The same fire that burned in her own chest 50 years ago, when she sat in boardrooms full of men who dismissed her, underestimated her, tried to push her out of the company she built with her own hands. The same refusal to accept injustice quietly. The same willingness to risk everything for what's right. Dorothy Chin, Eleanor says, will be offered her position back tomorrow morning. With full back pay, benefits restoration, and a formal apology from the company. Heather's eyes widen. Fresh tears spill down her cheeks. And you? Eleanor pauses, considering. You showed more courage and integrity than anyone else in this company, including most of the executives who are currently trying to figure out how to save their jobs. She glances toward the cluster of worried faces by the bar. They quickly look away. I could use someone like you on my team, Eleanor continues. Someone who sees problems and acts on them instead of looking the other way. Someone who understands that loyalty should flow in both directions. Heather blinks. Are you offering me a job? I'm offering you a choice. You can continue as an assistant, if that's what you want. Or you can come work directly for me, as a junior analyst with real responsibility and real opportunity to make changes. The ballroom has gone completely silent. Everyone present understands what they're witnessing, the birth of a new era for Avalon Enterprises. The old guard is being swept away, and something new is rising in its place. Heather straightens her spine. She wipes her face one more time, leaving fresh mascara streaks that make her look like a warrior after battle. I'd like that, she says. I'd like that very much. Eleanor nods. Good. We'll discuss details on Monday. For now, go home. Get some rest. You've earned it. Heather hesitates. Then, impulsively, she steps forward and hugs Eleanor. It's awkward. Eleanor Waters is not a woman who invites physical affection from strangers, but she allows it. She even pats the young woman's back once, twice, before gently disengaging. Thank you, Heather whispers. Thank you for listening. Thank you for believing me. She picks up her broken tablet and walks toward the exit, her steps steadier than they were before. Eleanor watches her go. The ballroom has nearly emptied now. Only the cluster of worried executives remains, plus a handful of waitstaff and security personnel. The chandeliers still glitter. The champagne still flows. But the party is over. Eleanor turns to face the executives. Jerome Bailey, the CFO, steps forward. He's a tall man in his 50s with graying temples and the practiced smile of someone who has survived multiple leadership changes by knowing when to bend. Mrs. Waters, he begins, I want you to know that I had no idea what Ethan was doing. The expense reports. Have your signature on them, Eleanor interrupts. Every single one. Jerome's smile falters. I was told they were legitimate. I trusted my team to verify. You trusted Ethan. You trusted him because trusting him was easier than questioning him. You signed documents you didn't read. You approved expenditures you didn't investigate. You chose comfort over competence. Jerome's face has gone gray. The same is true for all of you, Eleanor continues, sweeping her gaze across the remaining executives. You saw what was happening. You knew something was wrong. And you chose to ignore it because ignoring it protected your careers. Marcus Thompson, the VP of Marketing, clears his throat. Mrs. Waters, with all due respect, the pressure from above was nothing compared to what your employees faced. Eleanor's voice cuts like a blade. Dorothy Chen lost her job for doing the right thing. Young people like Heather risked everything to expose corruption. They had courage. You had comfort. The silence stretches. You have until Monday morning, Eleanor says finally. Resign with dignity, and I'll provide neutral references. Force me to terminate you, and the documentation goes public. She turns and walks toward the exit, her security team falling into step beside her. Behind her, Jerome Bailey sinks into a chair. Marcus Thompson stares at the floor. Denise Watkins pulls out her phone and begins typing what is almost certainly a resignation letter. The old guard is falling. And Eleanor Waters, 78 years old, widow, cancer survivor, grandmother, and founder of an $800 million empire, walks out of the Pemberton Hotel with her head held high. But outside, in the cool November night, her hands begin to shake. Not from fear. Not from anger. From exhaustion. The adrenaline that carried her through the confrontation is fading. The weight of what she's just done settles onto her shoulders like a physical burden. She's just restructured an entire company in a single evening. She's ended careers, begun new ones, and set in motion changes that will take months to fully implement. And she did it all with a handprint still burning on her cheek. Her phone buzzes. Richard's name appears on the screen. It's done, she says without preamble. I saw. Everyone saw. Richard's voice carries a note of awe. The video has gone viral. News outlets are already calling for statements. The PR team is standing by. Eleanor closes her eyes. Tell them I'll speak tomorrow. Tonight I need rest. Eleanor. Richard hesitates. There's something else. Something you need to know. Her eyes open. What? Ethan. He's not going quietly. He's already on the phone with lawyers, claiming wrongful termination, assault, defamation. He's threatening to countersue for the slap, saying you provoked him. Eleanor almost laughs. Almost. Let him try. Eleanor, I'm serious. He has resources. He has connections. This could get ugly. It already is ugly, Richard. A grown man struck a 78-year-old woman in front of 200 witnesses because she asked for directions to the bathroom. Eleanor's voice hardens. Let him countersue. Let him claim provocation. Every judge in America will see that video. Every jury will watch him raise his hand against an elderly widow. She pauses. And when they do, they'll see exactly what kind of man he is. The same kind of man who fired Dorothy Chen. The same kind of man who built his career on fear and stolen credit. The same kind of man who thinks power means hurting people who can't fight back. Richard is silent for a long moment. You're really not afraid of him, he says finally. I've faced scarier opponents than Ethan Harrington. Eleanor climbs into the waiting SUV, her security team closing the door behind her. I've survived heart attacks and hostile takeovers and burying my own child. A lawsuit from a disgraced executive? That's not fear. That's paperwork. The SUV pulls away from the Pemberton Hotel. Through the tinted windows, Eleanor watches the building shrink into the distance. The building named after her husband's family. The building where she was humiliated and vindicated in the span of 9 minutes. She touches her cheek one more time. The handprint is almost gone now. By morning, it will be nothing but a memory. But the lesson? The lesson will last forever. And somewhere across the city, Ethan Harrington sits in the back of a taxi, his career in ruins, his reputation destroyed, his future uncertain. He doesn't know it yet, but the worst is still coming. Because Eleanor Waters has one more secret to reveal. And when she does, it won't just end Ethan's career. It will send him to prison. The photograph sits on Eleanor's desk at 3:47 a.m. She hasn't slept. She can't. The adrenaline from the gala has faded into something else, a restless energy that drives her to pace her study, reviewing documents, making notes, preparing for the battles ahead. The photograph shows a younger Eleanor standing next to Henry outside the original Avalon Enterprises office on West 43rd Street. 1987, she was 50 years old. Henry was 53. Their son Michael stood between them, 18 and awkward in a suit he'd borrowed from his father. Michael died 4 years later. Car accident. The other driver walked away without a scratch. Eleanor picks up the photograph and studies her own face. That woman knew nothing about loss. That woman thought she had conquered the world and could keep it forever. That woman believed hard work and good intentions were enough to protect the people she loved. She was wrong. Eleanor sets the photograph down and returns to the files spread across her desk. 7 months of investigation. 7 months of anonymous letters from Heather, each one revealing another crack in the foundation of the company she built. But there's one file she hasn't opened yet. One secret she's kept even from Richard and the board. The financial audit. 3 weeks ago, Eleanor hired an outside forensic accounting firm to examine Avalon's books. Not the surface numbers, the real numbers. The offshore accounts. The shell companies. The money that moved through the system without appearing on any official report. What they found made her sick. Ethan Harrington wasn't just arrogant and abusive. He was a thief. Over the past 18 months, he'd siphoned nearly $2 million from the company through a web of fake vendors and inflated contracts. The money flowed through 4 different shell companies before landing in a personal account in the Cayman Islands. The evidence is overwhelming. Bank records, email trails, signed contracts with companies that exist only on paper. Enough documentation to put Ethan away for years. Eleanor hasn't shared this information with anyone yet. She wanted to confront him first. Wanted to look him in the eye when she revealed what she knew. Wanted to see his face when he realized that his carefully constructed empire of lies was about to collapse. But then he slapped her. And everything changed. Now, at 3:47 a.m., Eleanor makes a decision. She picks up her phone and dials the number for the Manhattan District Attorney's office. It goes to voicemail. Of course it does at this hour, but she leaves a detailed message. "My name is Eleanor Waters," she says. "I'm the founder and majority shareholder of Avalon Enterprises. I have evidence of financial fraud committed by a former employee named Ethan Harrington. Please contact me at your earliest convenience to arrange a meeting." She ends the call. The wheels are in motion now. By Monday, the DA's office will be reviewing her files. By next week, Ethan could be facing federal charges. By next month, he could be in handcuffs. Justice moves slowly. But it moves. Eleanor closes the fraud file and opens another. This one is smaller, thinner, containing only a few pages. But its contents are the most damaging of all. The harassment complaints. 12 women. 12 employees who reported inappropriate behavior from Ethan Harrington over the past 18 months. 12 complaints that were filed with HR, investigated briefly, and then quietly buried. Denise Watkins signed off on every single dismissal. Insufficient evidence. He said, she said. No corroborating witnesses. The same excuses repeated 12 times, while 12 women were told their experiences didn't matter. 12 women who eventually quit or were pushed out. 12 women whose careers were damaged or destroyed because they dared to speak up. Eleanor knows their names. She's already reached out to 4 of them. 2 have agreed to go on record. 2 are still considering. But even without their testimony, the pattern is clear. Denise Watkins didn't just fail to protect these women. She actively covered for their abuser. She prioritized Ethan's career over their safety. She chose the easy path, the comfortable path, the path that kept her own position secure. Tomorrow, Eleanor will offer Denise a choice. Resign immediately with a neutral reference, or face a formal investigation that will destroy what remains of her professional reputation. Eleanor already knows which option Denise will choose. The clock on the wall reads 4:15 a.m. Dawn is still hours away, but Eleanor can feel it coming. The beginning of a new day, a new chapter, a new era for the company she built. She stands and walks to the window. Her brownstone overlooks a small garden that Henry planted 30 years ago. The roses are dormant now, their branches bare against the November cold. But in spring, they'll bloom again. They always do. That's the thing about patience, Eleanor thinks. About waiting. About trusting that time will reveal what needs to be revealed and heal what needs to be healed. She waited 8 months to confront Ethan. 8 months of watching, documenting, building a case so airtight that no lawyer in the world could punch holes in it. And then he made it easy. He raised his hand against a 78-year-old woman in front of 200 witnesses. He gave her the perfect excuse to take immediate action. He handed her a weapon more powerful than any financial audit or harassment complaint: public sympathy. The video has been viewed over 2 million times now. The comments are overwhelmingly supportive. Queen behavior. Karma is real. That woman is my hero. Eleanor doesn't feel like a hero. She feels tired. She feels old. She feels the weight of every decision she's made tonight pressing down on her shoulders. But she also feels something else. Something she hasn't felt in years. Hope that the company she built can be saved. Hope that the employees who suffered under Ethan's leadership can heal. Hope that justice, however slow, is still possible in a world that often seems designed to protect the powerful at the expense of the vulnerable. Her phone buzzes. A text message from Heather. Can't sleep. Keeps replaying in my head. Thank you for believing me. Thank you for everything. Eleanor smiles. It's a small smile, tired around the edges, but genuine. She types back, rest. You did good. The hard part is over. But that's not entirely true, and Eleanor knows it. The hard part isn't over. The hard part is just beginning. Monday will bring resignations and terminations and restructuring. Tuesday will bring press conferences and legal meetings and shareholder calls. Wednesday will bring, she doesn't even know. The unknown stretches ahead like a road without markers. But Eleanor has walked unknown roads before. She walked them when she started this company with nothing but a kitchen table and a dream. She walked them when her son died and she had to keep functioning despite a grief that threatened to swallow her whole. She walked them when Henry got sick and she spent 18 months watching the love of her life fade away. She survived all of it. She'll survive this too. The first light of dawn begins to creep over the horizon. Eleanor watches it spread across the garden, touching the dormant roses, promising warmth that won't arrive for months. Soon she'll need to shower, dress, prepare for the day ahead. Soon she'll need to be Eleanor Waters, business titan, founder, leader. Soon she'll need to be strong. But for now, in these quiet moments before the world wakes up, she allows herself to be something else. A widow who misses her husband. A mother who misses her son. A woman who built something magnificent and almost lost it to a man who didn't deserve it. Eleanor touches the window glass. It's cold against her fingertips. I did it, Henry, she whispers to the empty room. I took it back. The words hang in the air like a prayer. And somewhere across the city, as the sun begins to rise over Manhattan, Ethan Harrington realizes that his nightmare is only beginning. Because the video was just the start. The fraud investigation is coming next. And when it arrives, there will be nowhere left to hide. The phone rings at 7:23 a.m. Eleanor answers on the second ring, her voice steady despite the fact that she's running on zero sleep and enough coffee to wake the dead. Mrs. Waters? This is Detective Jamal Washington with the NYPD Financial Crimes Unit. We received your message. Eleanor sets down her coffee cup. That was fast, Detective. The district attorney's office flagged it as priority. There's a pause. To be honest, we were already looking into Avalon Enterprises. Your call just confirmed what we suspected. Eleanor's grip tightens on the phone. You were already investigating? For about 6 weeks now. We received an anonymous tip about irregularities in the company's vendor payment system. Nothing concrete enough to move on until you called. An anonymous tip. 6 weeks ago. Eleanor does the math in her head. 6 weeks ago, Heather was still sending her letters. 6 weeks ago, Dorothy Chen was still fighting to clear her name through unofficial channels. 6 weeks ago, someone else decided to take matters into their own hands. Do you know who sent the tip? Eleanor. No. It came through our anonymous reporting system. But whoever it was had access to internal financial documents. Detailed access. Eleanor thinks about the cluster of executives at the gala. Jerome Bailey, CFO, whose signature appeared on every questionable expense report. Marcus Thompson, VP of Marketing, who oversaw the inflated vendor contracts. Either of them could have had access to the documents. Either of them could have seen the writing on the wall and decided to flip before the ship went down. Rats leaving a sinking ship tend to move fast. Detective Washington, Eleanor says, I have comprehensive documentation of the fraud. Bank records, email trails, signed contracts. I'd like to meet with your team as soon as possible. Can you come to our office this morning? Say, 9 o'clock? Eleanor glances at her schedule. She was supposed to spend the morning preparing for Monday's company-wide meeting. But some things take priority. I'll be there. She ends the call and immediately dials Richard. Eleanor. His voice is groggy. It's barely past 7. Please tell me nothing else has exploded. The police were already investigating Ethan. Someone inside the company tipped them off 6 weeks ago. The grogginess vanishes from Richard's voice. Who? They don't know. Anonymous tip. A long pause. Eleanor can practically hear Richard's legal mind working through the implications. This is good news, he says finally. It means the investigation has independent origin. Ethan can't claim you fabricated evidence out of revenge for the slap. That's what I was thinking. But it also means someone at the company has been working against him for longer than we realized. Someone besides Heather. Eleanor nods, even though Richard can't see her. We have a mole. Or an ally. Depending on how you look at it. Any guesses? Eleanor thinks about it. Jerome Bailey? He's a survivor, not a hero. He wouldn't risk his position unless he was certain which way the wind was blowing. Marcus Thompson? Too loyal to Ethan, at least until last night. Denise Watkins? She covered up harassment complaints, hardly the profile of a whistleblower. But there's one name Eleanor keeps coming back to. Dorothy Chen, she says. The accountant who was fired? She noticed irregularities in the expense reports. That's why Ethan got rid of her. But what if she didn't stop investigating after she was terminated? What if she kept digging from the outside? Richard makes a thoughtful sound. It's possible. She'd have connections at the company, people who might slip her information. And she'd certainly have motivation. I want to talk to her. Today, if possible. I can track down her contact information. Give me an hour. Thank you, Richard. She ends the call and takes another sip of coffee. It's gone cold, but she drinks it anyway. The pieces are falling into place. The anonymous tip. The letters from Heather. The fraud that Ethan thought he'd hidden so carefully. All of it converging on this moment, this reckoning that feels almost inevitable in hindsight. But Eleanor knows better than to trust inevitability. Nothing in business is inevitable until the contracts are signed and the money has changed hands. Until then, everything can fall apart. She showers and dresses in her most professional suit, charcoal gray, tailored perfectly, chosen specifically because it makes her look like exactly what she is, a woman who built an empire and isn't afraid to defend it. At 8:45 a.m., she arrives at the Financial Crimes Unit. Detective Washington meets her in the lobby, a tall man in his 40s with kind eyes and a handshake that means business. Mrs. Waters. Thank you for coming in so quickly. Thank you for taking this seriously, Detective. They walk through a maze of cubicles and filing cabinets to a conference room where 3 other investigators wait. Eleanor spends the next 2 hours walking them through her documentation, the shell companies, the fake vendors, the money trail that leads from Avalon Enterprises to Ethan Harrington's personal account in the Cayman Islands. The investigators take notes. They ask questions. They exchange glances that Eleanor can't quite read but suspects are very, very bad news for Ethan. This is comprehensive, Detective Washington says finally. More comprehensive than what we had. I wanted to be thorough. You were. He sets down his pen and looks at Eleanor directly. Mrs. Waters, I have to ask, why didn't you come forward with this information sooner? You've clearly been investigating for months. Eleanor considers her answer carefully. I wanted to give him a chance to resign quietly. To leave the company without public humiliation. I know that sounds naive, but I've seen careers destroyed by scandal. I've seen families torn apart by public disgrace. I didn't want that for anyone, even someone like Ethan. She pauses. But then he raised his hand to me. And I realized that some people don't deserve quiet exits. Some people need to face the full consequences of their actions. Detective Washington nods slowly. I understand. What happens now? We'll review your documentation, cross-reference it with what we already have, and present the case to the DA. If everything checks out, and I suspect it will, we'll move forward with charges. How long? Hard to say. Could be weeks. Could be months. Financial crimes cases are complicated. Eleanor stands. Thank you, Detective. I appreciate your time. Mrs. Waters? Detective Washington rises as well. I watched that video. The one from the gala. Eleanor waits. My grandmother was about your age when she passed. She was the strongest woman I ever knew. Built her own business, raised 4 kids, never took anything from anyone. He pauses. What that man did to you, it wasn't just assault. It was an insult to every woman who ever had to fight for respect in a world that didn't want to give it. Eleanor feels something tighten in her chest. Thank you, Detective. She leaves the Financial Crimes Unit and steps into the bright November morning. The city moves around her, taxis and pedestrians and delivery trucks and all the ordinary chaos of Manhattan on a Saturday. Her phone buzzes. A text from Richard. Found Dorothy Chin. She's willing to meet. Sending address now. Eleanor looks at the address. A coffee shop in Brooklyn, not far from Dorothy's apartment. She hails a taxi. 30 minutes later, she's sitting across from Dorothy Chin in a corner booth, 2 cups of untouched coffee growing cold between them. Dorothy is younger than Eleanor expected, mid-40s, with sharp eyes and the slightly rumpled look of someone who has spent the past several months fighting a battle no one else could see. Mrs. Waters. Dorothy's voice is neutral, guarded. I wasn't sure you'd actually come. I wasn't sure you'd agree to meet. Dorothy smiles slightly. When the woman who founded your former company calls and says she wants to talk about the man who destroyed your career, you make time. Eleanor nods. You sent the tip to the police. It's not a question. Dorothy's expression confirms it anyway. 6 weeks ago, Dorothy says. After I realized Heather's letters weren't getting results fast enough. The fraud was getting worse. Ethan was getting bolder. Someone needed to do something. Why didn't you come to me directly? Dorothy's eyes harden. With all due respect, Mrs. Waters, I didn't know if I could trust you. You built that company. You hired the executives who let Ethan run wild. For all I knew, you were part of the problem. Eleanor absorbs the words. They sting, but she can't argue with the logic. I understand. Do you? Dorothy leans forward. I gave 22 years to Avalon. 22 years of early mornings and late nights and weekends sacrificed. And when I tried to do the right thing, when I tried to protect the company from a fraud that would have eventually destroyed it, I was thrown away like garbage. Her voice cracks slightly. Denise Watkins looked me in the eye and told me my services were no longer required. She didn't even have the decency to lie about why. She just said the decision came from above and that I should be grateful for the severance package. Eleanor reaches across the table and places her hand over Dorothy's. I'm sorry. What happened to you was wrong. And I should have been paying closer attention. I should have seen what was happening. Dorothy stares at Eleanor's hand for a long moment. Then, slowly, she turns her palm over and squeezes back. Heather told me about the gala. About what you did. About what he did. About what he did and how you responded. Dorothy's eyes are bright with something that might be tears. You fired him. In front of everyone. You made him face what he'd done. It wasn't enough. It was a start. Dorothy takes a shaky breath. So what happens now? You didn't come all the way to Brooklyn just to apologize. Eleanor straightens. I came to offer you your job back. With a promotion if you want it. Head of internal audit, reporting directly to me. I need someone I can trust to make sure nothing like this ever happens again. Dorothy's mouth falls open. Mrs. Waters, I don't know what to say. Say yes. Help me fix what's broken. Help me build something better. For a long moment, Dorothy Chen doesn't speak. She stares at Eleanor with an expression that shifts from shock to disbelief to something that looks almost like hope. Then she smiles. A real smile, the first one Eleanor suspects she's worn in months. Yes. And with that single word, another piece falls into place. The team is coming together. The evidence is mounting. The wheels of justice are turning. But Ethan Harrington isn't finished yet. And neither is his revenge. Mrs. Waters? Detective Washington rises as well. I watched that video. The one from the gala. Eleanor waits. My grandmother was about your age when she passed. She was the strongest woman I ever knew. Built her own business, raised 4 kids, never took anything from anyone. He pauses. What that man did to you, it wasn't just assault. It was an insult to every woman who ever had to fight for respect in a world that didn't want to give it. Eleanor feels something tighten in her chest. Thank you, detective. She leaves the financial crimes unit and steps into the bright November morning. The city moves around her, taxis and pedestrians and delivery trucks and all the ordinary chaos of Manhattan on a Saturday. Her phone buzzes. A text from Richard. Found Dorothy Chen. She's willing to meet. Sending address now. Eleanor looks at the address. A coffee shop in Brooklyn, not far from Dorothy's apartment. She hails a taxi. 30 minutes later, she's sitting across from Dorothy Chen in a corner booth, 2 cups of untouched coffee growing cold between them. Dorothy is younger than Eleanor expected, mid-40s, with sharp eyes and the slightly rumpled look of someone who has spent the past several months fighting a battle no one else could see. Mrs. Waters. Dorothy's voice is neutral, guarded. I wasn't sure you'd actually come. I wasn't sure you'd agree to meet. Dorothy smiles slightly. When the woman who founded your former company calls and says she wants to talk about the man who destroyed your career, you make time. Eleanor nods. You sent the tip to the police. It's not a question. Dorothy's expression confirms it anyway. 6 weeks ago, Dorothy says. After I realized Heather's letters weren't getting results fast enough. The fraud was getting worse. Ethan was getting bolder. Someone needed to do something. Why didn't you come to me directly? Dorothy's eyes harden. With all due respect, Mrs. Waters, I didn't know if I could trust you. You built that company. You hired the executives who let Ethan run wild. For all I knew, you were part of the problem. Eleanor absorbs the words. They sting, but she can't argue with the logic. I understand. Do you? Dorothy leans forward. I gave 22 years to Avalon. 22 years of early mornings and late nights and weekends sacrificed. And when I tried to do the right thing, when I tried to protect the company from a fraud that would have eventually destroyed it, I was thrown away like garbage. Her voice cracks slightly. Denise Watkins looked me in the eye and told me my services were no longer required. She didn't even have the decency to lie about why. She just said the decision came from above and that I should be grateful for the severance package. Eleanor reaches across the table and places her hand over Dorothy's. I'm sorry. What happened to you was wrong. And I should have been paying closer attention. I should have seen what was happening. Dorothy stares at Eleanor's hand for a long moment. Then, slowly, she turns her palm over and squeezes back. Heather told me about the gala. About what you did. About what he did. About what he did and how you responded. Dorothy's eyes are bright with something that might be tears. You fired him. In front of everyone. You made him face what he'd done. It wasn't enough. It was a start. Dorothy takes a shaky breath. So what happens now? You didn't come all the way to Brooklyn just to apologize. Eleanor straightens. I came to offer you your job back. With a promotion if you want it. Head of internal audit, reporting directly to me. I need someone I can trust to make sure nothing like this ever happens again. Dorothy's mouth falls open. Mrs. Waters, I don't know what to say. Say yes. Help me fix what's broken. Help me build something better. For a long moment, Dorothy Chen doesn't speak. She stares at Eleanor with an expression that shifts from shock to disbelief to something that looks almost like hope. Then she smiles. A real smile, the first one Eleanor suspects she's worn in months. Yes. And with that single word, another piece falls into place. The team is coming together. The evidence is mounting. The wheels of justice are turning. But Ethan Harrington isn't finished yet. And neither is his revenge. The conference room fills at 8:57 a.m. on Monday morning. 243 employees crowd into the largest meeting space in the Avalon Enterprises headquarters. They overflow into the hallway. They watch on video screens in break rooms across 3 floors. They whisper and wonder and wait for the woman who summoned them all here. At exactly 9 a.m., Eleanor Waters walks to the front of the room. She looks different today. Not older or younger, but stronger somehow. More present. The quiet woman who disappeared from public life 3 years ago has been replaced by someone who radiates authority. "Thank you all for coming," she begins. "I know the past 72 hours have been difficult, confusing, frightening for some of you." She pauses, letting her gaze sweep across the assembled faces. "On Friday evening, I terminated Ethan Harrington for cause. Over the weekend, I accepted the resignations of 7 senior executives whose conduct did not meet the standards this company requires." Murmurs ripple through the crowd. 7. More than anyone expected. "I want to be clear about something." Eleanor's voice carries to every corner of the room. "This is not a purge. I am not interested in punishing people for the sins of their managers. Most of you came to work every day, did your jobs to the best of your abilities, and had no idea what was happening at the executive level." Relief flickers across several faces. "However," Eleanor continues, "there will be changes. Significant changes. The culture that allowed someone like Ethan Harrington to thrive at this company will be dismantled. The systems that protected abusers and silenced victims will be rebuilt from the ground up." She nods toward a woman standing near the door. "Many of you know Dorothy Chin. She was wrongfully terminated 7 months ago for doing exactly what any good accountant should do: asking questions when numbers didn't add up. As of this morning, Dorothy is our new head of internal audit. She reports directly to me, and her job is to make sure nothing like this ever happens again." Dorothy steps forward, her expression determined. "I won't lie to you," she says. "The next few months are going to be uncomfortable. We'll be reviewing everything: expense reports, vendor contracts, hiring and firing decisions. If you've done nothing wrong, you have nothing to fear. If you have something to confess, I encourage you to come forward now. Honesty will be taken into account." More murmurs. More nervous glances. Eleanor resumes speaking. "I also want to introduce Heather Monroe, who many of you know as Mr. Harrington's former assistant. Heather is now my executive liaison. She showed extraordinary courage in bringing serious misconduct to my attention at considerable personal risk." Heather stands near the video screen, looking both terrified and proud. Several people nod at her with new respect. "Finally," Eleanor says, "I want to address the elephant in the room. Most of you have seen the video from Friday night." Silence. Complete, absolute silence. What Ethan Harrington did to me was assault. It was wrong. And while I appreciate the outpouring of support I've received, I want to make something clear: I am not a victim. She stands taller. "I built this company from nothing. I grew it into what it is today. And when someone tried to destroy what I created, I took it back. That's not victimhood. That's ownership." Something shifts in the room. The fear and uncertainty begin to dissolve, replaced by something else. Or determination. "Avalon Enterprises has always been about second chances," Eleanor continues. "I started this company when no bank would give me a loan and no investor would take my calls. I built it by giving opportunities to people who had been overlooked and underestimated." She thinks of Henry, who drove trucks so she could pursue her dreams. She thinks of Michael, who never got to see what his mother would accomplish. She thinks of Dorothy and Heather and all the employees who stayed when they could have left, who kept working despite impossible conditions. That's the company I want to lead again. Not a company built on fear and intimidation, but one built on respect and opportunity. One where doing the right thing is rewarded instead of punished. One where every employee from the mailroom to the boardroom is treated with dignity. She pauses. It won't happen overnight. Change takes time. But I'm committed to this vision, and I'm asking you to commit to it with me. The room erupts in applause. It starts slowly, a few hands clapping near the back, then spreads like wildfire until every person in the room is on their feet. The sound washes over Eleanor like a wave, carrying with it all the exhaustion and fear and hope of the past 72 hours. For a moment, she allows herself to feel it, to accept the gratitude and trust of people who have been through hell and are ready to believe in something better. Then she raises her hand, and the applause dies down. Before we close, I need to share one more piece of information. The room tenses. This morning, I was informed that the Manhattan District Attorney's Office has opened a formal investigation into financial fraud at Avalon Enterprises. Evidence suggests that Mr. Harrington embezzled nearly $2 million through a network of shell companies and fake vendors. Guess? Shocked whispers. The investigation is ongoing, and I'm not at liberty to discuss details. But I want you to know that this company is cooperating fully with law enforcement. Anyone with information relevant to the investigation should contact Dorothy Chen's office immediately. She looks around the room one final time. That's all I have for today. Department heads, please meet me in conference room A in 15 minutes to discuss transition plans. Everyone else, please return to your regular duties. We have a company to rebuild. The crowd begins to disperse. People cluster in small groups, discussing what they've just heard, processing the new reality. Some look excited. Some look worried. Most look hopeful. Eleanor makes her way toward conference room A, Heather and Dorothy flanking her like loyal lieutenants. She's halfway there when her phone buzzes. A text from an unknown number. This isn't over. You took everything from me. Now I'm going to take everything from you. Eleanor stares at the screen. The message can only be from one person. She shows the phone to Heather and Dorothy. Their faces pale. Should we call the police? Heather asks. Eleanor considers. Then she shakes her head. Not yet. This is exactly what he wants, to make us react. To make us afraid. She deletes the message and pockets her phone. Ethan Harrington has already lost. His career is over. His reputation is destroyed. And soon, he'll be facing federal charges that could put him away for years. She looks at her two young allies. The worst he can do now is send angry text messages. And if that's his idea of revenge, then he's even more pathetic than I thought. She straightens her shoulders and walks into conference room A, where the department heads wait with nervous expressions and prepared questions. The meeting lasts 3 hours. They discuss restructuring, new policies, communication strategies, legal considerations. They debate and plan and compromise and decide. By the time it ends, Eleanor is exhausted. Her body aches. Her mind feels like cotton. But something else fills her chest. Something that feels almost like peace. She did it. She took back her company. She protected her employees. She stood up to a bully and won. And tomorrow she'll do it all again. Because that's what leaders do. That's what survivors do. That's what Eleanor Waters has always done. As she leaves the office that evening, the sun setting over Manhattan, her phone buzzes again. Another text from the unknown number. I warned you. Eleanor deletes it without reading the rest. Some battles are worth fighting. And some enemies aren't worth her time. 6 months pass. The leaves on Henry's rose bushes have returned, green and vibrant, promising blooms that will come with summer. Eleanor stands in her garden on a May morning, coffee in hand, watching a robin build a nest in the trellis near the fence. So much has changed. Ethan Harrington was arrested in February, charged with 12 counts of financial fraud and 3 counts of witness tampering. The texts he sent Eleanor after his termination became evidence of his unstable state of mind. His lawyers tried to spin them as the desperate actions of a man who felt wronged, but the jury saw through it. He's currently awaiting sentencing. His lawyer is pushing for a minimum security facility. The prosecutor wants 5 to 7 years. Either way, Ethan Harrington will spend the foreseeable future behind bars. Denise Watkins resigned the Monday after the gala, as expected. She tried to find work at other companies, but her name had become synonymous with corporate cover-ups. Last Eleanor heard, she was working as an office manager for a small accounting firm in New Jersey. The other executives scattered like leaves in wind. Some found new positions. Some reinvented themselves. Some simply disappeared from the professional world entirely. Dorothy Chen transformed the internal audit department into something that actually worked. Her team uncovered 3 additional instances of minor fraud in the first quarter alone. Nothing as dramatic as Ethan's scheme, but proof that the old systems had been failing for years. All 3 employees were given the choice to repay what they'd taken and resign, or face prosecution. All 3 chose door number 1. Heather Monroe turned out to be even more capable than Eleanor expected. As executive liaison, she became the bridge between Eleanor's vision and the company's day-to-day operations. She has a gift for translating corporate speak into plain English and for making people feel heard even when the answer is no. Eleanor promoted her to Vice President of Employee Relations last month. At 26, she's the youngest VP in company history. The employees who stayed through the transition became the backbone of the new Avalon Enterprises. They had survived a toxic leader and emerged stronger. They understood, in a way that new hires couldn't, exactly what was at stake and why the new culture mattered. The employees who left, whether by choice or by necessity, made room for fresh talent. Young people who saw the viral video and thought, "I want to work for that woman." Experienced professionals who had been burned by other toxic workplaces and recognized Avalon's transformation as genuine. The company's stock price dipped initially as markets reacted to the scandal. But it recovered within weeks, then climbed higher than ever. Investors, it turned out, liked stability. They liked accountability. They liked knowing that the person in charge would do the right thing even when it was hard. Eleanor stands in her garden and thinks about all of this. The chaos and the clarity. The destruction and the rebuilding. The moment when Ethan's hand connected with her face and everything changed. She still thinks about that moment sometimes. Not with anger. The anger burned out months ago. Not with fear. She was never really afraid of Ethan, even when he was sending threatening texts. Mostly, she thinks about it with something like gratitude. Because that slap woke her up. For 3 years, she had been sleepwalking through life. Grieving Henry. Missing Michael. Letting the company she built drift away from her vision because she was too tired to fight for it. The slap changed that. It reminded her who she was. What she was capable of. Why she had built Avalon in the first place. Not for money. Not for power. Not for the corner office or the magazine covers or the envious glances from competitors. For this, the chance to create something that mattered. Something that gave people opportunities they wouldn't have otherwise. Something that proved a girl from Scranton could change the world if she worked hard enough and refused to give up. Eleanor sets down her coffee cup and walks back into the house. The board meeting starts in 2 hours, and she still needs to review the quarterly reports. But first, she stops at Henry's photograph on the mantel. "I wish you could see it," she says softly. "Everything we built. Everything it's becoming." The photograph doesn't answer, of course. Henry's smile remains frozen in time, preserved forever at age 68. But Eleanor likes to think he knows. Wherever he is, whatever comes next, she likes to think he's watching and proud. She touches the glass briefly, then turns toward her study. There's work to do. There's always work to do. And Eleanor Waters, 78 years old, widow, cancer survivor, grandmother, founder, and CEO, is ready to do it. 1 month later, Eleanor receives a letter. It's handwritten, which is rare these days. The return address shows a federal correctional facility in upstate New York. She almost throws it away unopened. Almost. But curiosity wins, as it usually does. "Mrs. Waters," the letter begins. "I know you have no reason to read this. No reason to care what I have to say. But I'm writing anyway, because my therapist says I need to take accountability for what I did." Eleanor sits down at her kitchen table. "I was wrong. Not just about hitting you, though that was the worst thing I've ever done, but about everything. The way I treated employees. The way I built my career on fear instead of respect. The way I convinced myself that power meant I could do whatever I wanted without consequences. I don't expect your forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that I understand now. I understand what you built and why it mattered. I understand that I almost destroyed something precious because I was too arrogant to see its value. I'm getting help here. Therapy. Anger management. A program for executives who lost their way. It's humbling, which I guess is the point. I hope your company thrives. I hope the people I hurt find peace. And I hope that someday, maybe, I can become someone worthy of a second chance. Sincerely, Ethan Harrington. Eleanor reads the letter twice. Then she folds it carefully and places it in a drawer. She doesn't write back. Some bridges, once burned, cannot be rebuilt. But she also doesn't throw the letter away. Because people can change. Eleanor has to believe that. She's seen it happen. With Dorothy, with Heather, with countless employees who started as one thing and became something better. Maybe Ethan will change. Maybe he won't. Either way, it's no longer her responsibility. Her responsibility is right here. The company, the employees, the legacy she's building for future generations. That's enough. That's more than enough. Eleanor Waters stands in her kitchen, 79 years old now, still fighting, still building, still refusing to give up. And somewhere in a federal facility upstate, a man who once thought he was untouchable sits in a small cell and thinks about the elderly woman he slapped at a party. The woman who turned out to be his boss. The woman who took back everything he tried to steal. The woman who showed the world what real power looks like. And he finally understands what he lost. Not just his job. Not just his freedom. But the chance to be part of something that mattered. The chance to build instead of destroy. The chance to be remembered for something other than a viral video of the worst moment of his life. That's the real lesson of Eleanor Waters' story. Power isn't about force. It isn't about fear. It isn't about making people smaller so you can feel bigger. Real power is about building something lasting. Something that outlives you. Something that makes the world a little bit better than you found it. Eleanor understood that from the beginning. Ethan had to learn it the hard way. And now you know it too. So here's the question, what are you going to build? And if you enjoyed this story, take a moment to subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you never miss another one. We post stories like this every week. Stories about courage, justice, and the moments that change everything. Leave a comment below and tell us, have you ever witnessed karma in action? Have you ever seen someone powerful finally face the consequences of their actions? Share your story. You might inspire someone else. And remember, no matter who you are, no matter how powerless you feel, you have the ability to stand up for what's right. Just like Eleanor Waters did. Until next time.